My name is Aisley Stesniak, and I'm so excited to be interviewing Sheila Boyington today. She is just a phenomenal woman who I've had the honor of being connected with. And I will let her introduce herself, and then we will dive straight into questions. So take it away.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ainsley, and thank you for having me. So, as Ainsley said, I'm Sheila Boyington. I've been the CEO of a ed tech company for 27 years. I sold two companies. My first one was sold to ACT, the college testing company, and did a workforce curriculum. And then I'm actually an engineer by training. And so is my husband, Dane. And we created Learning Blade, which is a STEM and computer science curriculum for middle school students, showing them the different careers. Again, trying to lean into you can't be what you can't see motto.
Mhm.
And then also Ready for Industry, which is a new credentialing system that is has been released, but the credential will be released later this year. But I'm also the mother of two wonderful daughters as well, who I believe are really trailblazers in their own right. And maybe we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about what they're doing. But very excited to be here. And also the chair of Million Women Mentors, a national effort designed to encourage more girls and women to go into STEM, and actually an international. I've been working with Turkey and several other countries on efforts of that as well, and been doing that for 10 years. So yeah, so hello everybody.
Needless to say, you are amazing, and I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on, how to advocate for yourself, how to be more confident, because you are definitely one of the most confident women that I know. So, can't wait to have this conversation. So, first up, we talk about this idea of self-advocacy a lot, and I feel like we use it sort of as this fancy word. Um, but I'm just curious, what exactly does self-advocacy mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's something we all need, man or woman, anybody needs
Mhm.
it. And you have to learn, I think, a little bit about who you are first, yourself, learn it first,
Mhm.
then you can advocate for it. So I think sometimes, we are just self-advocacy, like we're advocating for something maybe we're really not good at, or we aren't, that's not really something we want to do. So I think
Mhm.
for me, first is kind of self-discovery a little bit of like, who do you want to be? What do you want to be? And then I think you have to lean into those opportunities when things are presented to you. I mean, to be very honest, I'm an entrepreneur, obviously a success, I can say a successful one at this point in my life. But that's if somebody had told me when I was your age, Ainsley, this is what I would be doing, I'd be like, I don't think so. Because I really didn't know who I was until I got a little bit older. And just recognizing the amount of work and what I do and what I'm able to do was really different from other people. And so, I think the biggest thing I learned, and self-advocacy is certainly a piece of this, is also to help others understand that you will advocate for them. I think that is like the biggest gift you can give anyone, is being their advocate and helping them realize who they are and how they can grow. And I think that's one of the self sort of realizations I have for myself, is how much I was willing to help other people. And that probably came from my mom. My mother was really a trailblazer. She came to this country by herself in 1956 from India on a boat. Can't call your mom and dad, have to write them a letter. I don't think any of us today can even understand what that is like, because we have trackers on our kids everywhere they go. She was in a totally different country, et cetera. My dad similarly also came from India. They happened to meet here and get married and live in this country. So I was like the first Indian kid growing up, really, quite
Mhm.
frankly, almost in the entire country. And so, I had to learn a lot about self-advocacy, and talking about this and thinking about it. There's a lot of pieces that happened to me when I was like younger in school, because I was good in math, I was good in things like that, and I was kind of not very popular as a kid because I kind of was advocating a little bit for myself, because I
Mhm.
was different. I wasn't black, I wasn't white, and I lived in North Carolina, and there was just no knowledge of what being from India meant to students. And so I think, what I still say is all of those experiences is what made me successful today, as not being afraid and being strong enough to stand for what I totally believed in.
That's really inspiring to hear. And I think there's a lot to unpack with that story. First of all, the fact that you mentioned this idea of self-discovery, knowing who you are before trying to put yourself out there. And I think that's a really important point that sometimes gets overlooked when it comes to self-advocacy, because there is that self part. You have to know what your strengths are. You have to know where what you want out of something before you can put yourself out there for it. So for instance, if you aren't sure of the kind of career path that you want, you can't go out and say, hey, you should take me on as an employee, because you don't have any sort of understanding of what we would bring to that space. So I was just curious, what do you think, were there any particular experiences? You kind of referenced this with your mention of your childhood, but do you think there were any particular experiences or strategies that you implemented that really helped shape that journey of self-discovery for you?
I mean, definitely I loved math and science, et cetera. So that kind of led me down the path of becoming an engineer, but quite frankly, mainly because my dad was an engineer. I'm a good
Mhm.
Indian daughter. I became an engineer because he was an engineer. But really without a whole lot of knowledge. But I will tell you one defining moment for me was when I was like in high school and getting ready to go to college. And I was just like, you get your little sort of career thing that tells you here's what you should be, and mine said accountant, which I was very good at math. And of course I've never balanced a checkbook, so probably not the best advice for me. But I really wanted to be a teacher. I mean, I just loved sort of, helping people and that sort of thing. And AEW did a study, girls, we want career paths where we're helping people. That's just kind of
Right?
thing. Oh yeah,
Isn't that
for
interesting?
sure. That's why in STEM, like we're always chemists and this and that, whatever the pure sciences, because we're going to go into nursing, et cetera. But anyway, not to get off track, but I want to be a teacher. And quite frankly, I knew I also needed to have a certain income. I wanted to live a good life. So I looked at the salary of a teacher and I looked at the salary of a chemical engineer. And I was like, I could work half time as a chemical engineer and make more money than a teacher. And so
Hmm.
that, quite frankly, was a very defining moment for me to put me on the path toward engineering. And then I just kind of ballooned from there and went on to other things. But yeah, I think that's a moment I remember really thinking about, like specifically that was the moment when I started advocate for myself, like I am going to be an engineer. Go take these classes, go do what you need to.
Going just out of curiosity, were you ever at all like worried about whether that would be a harder career path? Because I feel like we hear a lot about the one of the reasons why there aren't very many women in STEM is because there is that fear of, oh, this is going to be harder. Or because obviously, becoming a teacher, I feel like has that stigma that's a little bit easier. So were you
Yeah.
ever worried about that?
I don't think there was a moment when I ever felt like I'm not gonna do this. Definitely organic chemistry cleaned my clock pretty well to really work hard in that class. And
Mhm.
I loved inorganic chemistry very much, but I did not like organic, which is why I'm a doctor or whatever. But I don't think it was like I ever thought like, oh, I don't want to do this. I will say I did graduate in the early 80s when there was a recession. And even
Mhm.
as a chemical engineer, you could not get a job. It was very, very difficult. And
Mhm.
I moved to California with I just got married and moved to California because my husband's going to do his PhD at Berkeley. And I needed a job. And I was like going to apply as a bank teller because there was like nothing out there,
Wow.
nothing. And a couple of I didn't go to work in the bank. I ended up getting a job in a lab. But it was still not the quality, the high quality of job that I needed. But when I was there, I got, within 6 months, I got another job with a big engineering firm and I loved it. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I was doing water and wastewater treatment. Sounds really geeky, but it's so fun. And
That
I
sounds really cool.
I loved my job. I got to travel, like to go to sites and do things, and I really, really, really enjoyed that part of my career. I'm not going to say that I wish I was doing that today, no, but it helped me to understand more about, how to be in the work world, how to deal with people, all of that things that we need when we're coming up as a young engineer, particularly.
Well, that's really interesting here, and it sounds like really one of the key pieces to your lack of fear was the fact that you never once doubted yourself. You never said, "Oh, I can't do this," or you never thought,
I don't think I
"Oh, I'm
never
not going
doubted
to."
myself. I didn't let that prevail. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha. That yeah, that's I
Yeah.
like that the way that that's worded better, definitely. Because I was reading something about how when it comes to courage, courage is not well, I mean, there's this beautiful quote. I don't remember the movie it's from, but courage is not um, the absence of fear. It's the decision that something is more important than fear. And I really like that. And especially when it comes to self-advocacy, because you can be afraid to speak up, you can be afraid to take the hard route, but instead of letting that stop you, you should acknowledge that that's a part of your feelings, but also acknowledge that your determination and your passion for this matters more to you than the fear of possible risk or retaliation or failure. And so it
Yeah.
sounds like that's really been something that's pivotal, that's been
I think,
central to
yeah, and
your.
I mean, I think that's been very well demonstrated by my oldest daughter too, for sure. Like
Mhm,
she did engineering as well. She did industrial engineering, and then she got a job with Bay Management, which is known for being quite the place that churns people, like she was working 12, 14 hours a day. But
wow.
that child for me, and and our other daughter too is very similar, but she would do, I tell people she would have cleaned toilets if she thought that would get her to where she needed to go. Like she
Mhm,
always understood everything she was doing was feeding into her, getting her to go where she wanted to go. And she would do it no matter what it was. And, at
mhm,
some point, we did have to stop her at some point, like, okay, now are you where you want to be or not? Because, and now, of course, she's had a strategy for DoorDash. So, like, yeah, okay, she's doing fine. um you know but I think that determination, that sticking with it, going, that
mhm,
persevering. I mean, definitely, you think about somebody like my mother coming to this country, from India and having nothing. How much perseverance did she have to even go to school here and study here and make
mhm,
friends and stay here and live here? And so I saw that firsthand with my parents, definitely. My dad similarly, like, was only Indian, like there was just not anybody there. And I'm gonna
mhm,
say, like, even about 30 plus years ago, when I moved back to the South from California, I went to work for an engineering company when I came here. But my first job that I was going to out on the site, my boss, I could tell he was very uncomfortable. He came to talk to me. He said, "You cannot go to the job site." And I was like, "What do you mean?" I need to go out to the job site. I need to measure some stuff. I need to see some stuff. And he just was very comfortable. He wanted to tell me, he's like, "Well, this is unfortunately some of what happens still in rural areas." He's like, they're not going to really accept a woman as an engineer nor one of color. And I was like, oh, okay. Like that just kind of went boom. Whoa. Like for me, I don't see myself as that. I know
mhm,
that's what people see. But I never saw myself as that. I'm just an engineer. I'm doing my work. I know how to do my work as
mhm,
good as anybody. I'm going to do really well. But that was a moment for sure. Like these are some of those defining moments in your life. You're like, yeah, okay. I see that. It's one of the reasons I became so passionate about helping girls in engineering, and have been
mhm.
doing that work for, the last 30 plus years. And we'll be doing it until the day God takes me from this earth. So it's my passion.
That
Sure.
That's so wonderful to hear about the passion side, not the experience side. That's so frustrating because I
Yeah.
bet it's very dehumanizing. I bet to be told like somebody's not going to accept you just because of this one thing that you can't control about yourself. Like that's just so wrong on so many levels. But
It is. But
I,
I mean, and again, I always take all these things and I tell people like, but that's who makes you who you are. You know,
mhm,
my dad always has a fun story, he tells about like people, if they're sitting in a room and everybody writes down their biggest problem and they put it in the middle of the pot. And if you
mhm,
tell other people, everybody in the room will take their own problem back. Like they don't want other
mhm.
people's problems. So I think, you have to figure out like, this is who makes you who you are. And you have to look at that way. You can't be like, oh my gosh, why did this happen to me? But, oh, this happened to me. I need to learn something from it and move on.
I like that perspective because I feel like a lot of times when it comes to the issues that we face in our lives, we're just like, oh, I wish, that person over there, their life is so perfect. Like, I wish, why can't my life be like theirs? But there's this great quote that I remember reading a while back that's like, don't compare your life to everyone else's because their highlight reel or something, basically saying, what
That
you see in somebody else's life is just a fraction of what they're actually
exactly. And I
experiencing.
mean, obviously you guys are much more than having all this Instagram and all the
Mm-hmm.
social media. And let's be clear, people only put really, really good stuff or really, really bad stuff. They don't put like, oh my gosh, I ran out of gas. Is that, like, I mean, although people used to, when we started social media, some people did, I'm going to the grocery store. Like, we don't care if you go to the grocery store. But now it became much more, and people are, they're just putting much more on social media, like what I'm doing, and it's nice, I post some, not a lot, but I feel because my life is very good and I'm very blessed, and I don't want to make other people feel bad about their lives, right? So I think that you have to be somewhat sensitive to how we treat that and also how we interpret that too, because you see a bunch of your friends together, you're like, oh, why didn't they tell me? And you can just get into your head a lot of things that you don't need to. And I think if you're going to stay true to where you need to go as a person, you need to kind of be more centered than letting any of that impact you, which is not easy.
Exactly. And that goes back to the core of this conversation, which is self-advocacy, and that seeing the way that other people are living their lives, you should not let that dictate the way that you live your own life. Not don't compare yourself to other people, or conversely, diminish your own achievements and your own accomplishments and your own successes, even if it's something as simple as, I was so tired today, but I got up and I ran because I'm training for this marathon, and I ran the exact amount that I wanted to today. Maybe that wasn't winning the Nobel Prize, but I did something that
Make
was
you feel
hard, and
good. Yep.
yes, exactly. So I feel like maybe when it comes to developing those skills of self-advocacy, it's almost something that you can practice every day, in that recognizing that what you bring to the world matters, even if it's something as small as getting up in the morning and doing something. And
Yeah.
because you're moving forward, you're learning every day.
Yep.
And maybe there's some pieces of life that you can't control, and so don't worry about those. Worry about what you can control, and what you can always control is yourself, what you do, the
Yep.
choices you make, how you react to situations. And that's
100%.
like and that goes back to what we were saying before about self-discovery. Knowing who you are can help you when you're trying to then continue to develop this identity of who you are, and where you want to be, and then getting yourself there.
Absolutely.
And then that goes great into this next sort of realm of questions, which is really, I just am curious because of, obviously, you're a very successful entrepreneur, but a lot of part of what you do is advocating for STEM education and advocating for women in STEM. And so, um, has there ever been a time when you have wanted to speak up, whether it's been in a situation, you're like a personal situation or more of a professional, but felt like your voice was going to be ignored or disrespected or scorned? And what did you do in that situation?
Well, Ainsley, I think you know me fairly well. I haven't had that happen to me too much. I pretty much do speak
Really?
what I feel. And
Hmm.
and not everybody agrees with everything I say. I
Hmm.
think in our country right now, politics is a difficult place to be. That's one place where I do hold back just because I want to be respectful and I don't want to really get in arguments with people over
Hmm.
things. But other than that, I'm pretty known for speaking what I think. And in fact, I just got a call this week from a friend who is interviewing some candidate that's worked at a company that I've been involved in, and she's like, I knew I'm going to call you because I know you're going to tell me just like it is. I said, yeah, that's kind of what I'm known for. Um, and it's something that I very much have been known from. I think probably, for me, the biggest difficulty and again, not that there weren't women that were in these roles, but none that I had access to, was as I was growing my company as an entrepreneur, or as I mean, I've done a lot of work politically with a lot of governors, not politics wise, education wise, on STEM and computer
Hmm.
science and other things like that. And I've been very fortunate to be a partner with them in so many different things with NGA and other things. And, you know, that is really, that has not been difficult for me because I have done that, but I didn't have a lot of women that I could call on to do that.
Mm.
I mean, like I always tell people, like, don't be afraid to ask for help or for somebody, to somebody's number or name. I love the story. Forget about the politics, but Bill Clinton, if you've ever read his book, it's really cool. And one of the things that stuck with me after reading his book was when he was like younger than you, maybe your age or whatever, Ainsley, he asked every single person he met for their business card. Of course, now we have to screenshot the blah, blah, whatever, but he collected all these business cards. So when he got ready to run for president, he pulled out these shoe boxes and shoe boxes of business cards that he had collected over the years and just started
Mhm.
calling one by one to ask for their support. And I'm
Oh my
like,
gosh.
what a power. I love to tell this story, particularly to young women and
Wow.
men, students, whatever, that I get to talk to. And you won't, it's very funny because I'll tell this story. And then you can see really who are the ones that are, I would say, aggressive, and not a bad way, in a good way. They'll come and
Mhm.
ask me for my card, but there are a lot of kids that don't. I'm like, why don't you ask for your card? Like, you should ask for your card. Like, I mean, like, I think, Ainsley, you have a lot of those characteristics of asking for what you want and putting yourself out there, and that kind of thing. Obviously you're doing this and doing so well and so many other things, but I think we just have to continue to let people know it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask, can you advise me on this? I did a call this afternoon with some young entrepreneurs that are in some AI company, and they were like, how did you do this? What did you do? And everything. Like, it's okay to ask people. I mean, I will be honest, right now I get asked a little more than I really sometimes can handle. So sometimes I might say no, but not, I have never really much done that in the past. And like I told you, you want something done, you ask the busiest person to do it. Mostly it's going to get done. So I think that there have not been moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to speak up and I can't. That's really not, and particularly anything that I can remember in in my more recent life in the last 25, 30 years. I've really not been afraid. Yes, in school, yes, I was afraid to talk. I was afraid to talk in class, believe it or not.
Mhm.
I would not talk in
Mhm.
class. Yeah, I was just like always very guarded because I didn't know if I was going to say something right or whatever. And
Mhm.
I always tell myself, like, I'm a much popular adult than I was as a teenager. As a teenager, I was not popular. As an adult, I'm very popular. My friends know they can count on me. My colleagues know they can count on me. The community knows they can count on me. So I think, that is very different than what I was when I was younger, for sure.
Mhm. It's interesting. I feel the same way, honestly. Like when I was younger, I was the shyest kid. Like
Oh,
you
you're
you
so
can't
old,
even know.
Ainsley.
Still, like even within like the past like 10 years, the way that I've changed is interesting. So I definitely feel that. But yeah, I agree. I when I first asked you to for this interview, I was like, she would be the perfect person to ask because I have never like once considered her ever to be like not confident. Like she is one of the most confident people that I know. And I think part of that is because you say whatever you believe. And I think that's really powerful. And I like that you mentioned when you were talking about that, the business card story about how you tell that story. You said the phrase aggressive, but in a good way. And I thought that was really interesting because I think it touches upon two things, which is one,
Mm,
a lot of times women who are
yeah,
constantly advocating for themselves were labeled as aggressive or
yeah,
bossy.
in a
And
bad way. Yeah,
exactly. But
yeah,
there's also, aggression does not have to be this negatively connotated like
right.
action, like I guess characteristic. It
Yeah. Well, I
can
mean, don't
be
you hear all
powerful.
these stories where, oh, if a man did, go and ask for a raise, it's fine, great, they get the
Hmm.
raise. If a woman goes and asks for a raise, it's like, oh, you're very aggressive. And I mean, this is the one thing, if anybody wants to listen to this, this is the one thing they should think about. Anytime you're getting a job offer, you ask for some more, ask for more money, more whatever, you will 100% get it. You will 100% get it. And I taught my daughters that. I've taught my mentees that. I'm like, you don't take the first thing that comes on there. And even for myself, I would have paid more to some of the employees I hired as well, but they didn't ask for it. So I think that's one thing, because that's about your self-advocacy. I am worth that. Like I think if you just take the first thing that comes to you, then it means you're just, you're letting somebody else value you. But if you really believe in yourself, you should ask for more. And it's not to be greedy, but it's also to be your advocate, right? You're talking about self-advocacy. So these are things that will change your lives. And I'm
Mhm.
also just, a huge, huge believer in paying it forward. You know, I
Mhm.
I mean, I cannot tell you how many random acts of kindness I've done and, things like that. I've been very blessed, but even if you aren't, super wealthy or whatever, you could still do little things for people that just change their lives. We have to think about ways to lift everybody up because I do believe, and lifting everybody up raises all ships, right? And so,
Right.
not being that I just keep getting more and more and just leave everybody else behind. No, we need to raise all ships. And so that's why, I believe the work that you're doing, Ainsley, and what we're doing with Million Mentors, what Learning Blade does, helping students get on the right career pathway to a higher, better paying career job, ready for
Mhm.
industries, doing similar things for adults. So these are kind of the things like everything I've got to do. And are kind of put me into what I would consider like a social entrepreneur. Yes, I'm very
Mhm.
successful as an entrepreneur, but the people that have used our resources are also improving their lives. And so, I think anytime you can win and you can help people, that's pretty special.
I completely agree. I empowerment is, I would say, my biggest not passion, but just it's really at the heart of who I am because I think I completely agree. Yes, achieving on your own looks great, but that's one person. There are millions of people out there. And when you know that the choice that you have made to help somebody else and you see the way that they thrive because of that, it's just incredible. Um I love networking. I love connecting people with resources and things. That is like the hidden secret when it comes to self-advocacy, I think, because we we center it on this idea of, oh, I have to fight for myself,
Yeah.
me, I have to push myself out there, but
No,
it's so much more than that. It's about thinking about where you fit in with the bigger picture and how you can maximize your time to not only bring yourself further but also to bring others with you, and
exactly.
maybe taking on that leadership role that you might otherwise get passed over because of biases. Like if you take on that leadership, then you can bring on more people too. And so it, it's not so much about building like your resume, building your getting to that position of power so that you can say, haha, I wield the power now. It's about getting to the place where you can make the most good happen for the world, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Yep. Yeah.
And as we are sort of nearing the end of time, are there any last pieces of advice that you would give to a woman looking to develop her own self-advocacy
Yeah.
skills, or build her self-confidence?
I mean, I think, also just surrounding yourself with people that build you up. No,
Mhm.
pretty cliche-ish, but not people that tear you down, right? So you want to be
Mhm.
around positive and happy people. And everything's not about your career. I also believe in family. Family is so important. Dana and I have two fantastic daughters, and just I one of my things, of course, very old fashioned, obviously I'm older, so I believe in this, is also like, who do you choose to spend your life with is the most important decision you make in your life. I feel no matter
Mhm.
what, you can change your career, you can change your house, you can change where you live, all of that, and you can change who you are current, who you're with after you're married or together or whatever it is. But your spouse or your partner really can either take you to the moon or really take you down. And so I think, making sure you have the right partner, which I've been blessed for 40 years. Got married right out of undergrad and everybody thought we were kind of crazy, but But 40 years later, here we are. And I think that, that is so important. That's a really important thing that sometimes we don't talk about that anymore. I mean, I think there's just so much, around, oh, you can just, get divorced, split up, whatever, it's okay, fine and dandy, which I'm just still a big believer in the family unit and whatever your family looks like. All families don't have to look exactly the same. They can be different. But, having those people that are your safe space is also
Hmm.
really vital for your self-advocacy, because you can't advocate for yourself out here if you don't have support back here. And so I think
Yes.
that is so important. And, your parents are part of that, your relatives, all of the people that are around you that love you no matter what,
Mhm.
I think is what we need in our lives. And so, to end on that, to say, like, yes, learn about yourself, advocate for yourself, build your family, whatever your family unit looks like, and one that will support you as you do go out there, because invariably you're going to get kicked down at some point, and you're going to have to come home and lick your wounds, and you're going to need somebody there that picks you back up and pushes you back out the door. And so don't forget about that, because that's an important part of everyone's lives, I think.
I absolutely love that. And I think, you were completely right. And that's a perfect place to end. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all of your wisdom and for everything that you do for women, for STEM, for the world. Um, I'm so honored to have had this chance to talk with you, and I really, really appreciate your time.
Well, Ainsley, keep it up. I expect to see you somewhere on a high post somewhere. Just remember that you knew me when.
Thank you.